I don't know what's happening. I just started crying.
It's okay. It's okay. It's good. It's okay.
I don't know.
Well guys, it feels like we're finally coming to a proper conclusion to this 3-part series of reviewing straight Netflix garbage. 13 Reasons Why Season 3 has been out for about a month at the time of me recording this. Just like the second season of 13 Reasons Why, my expectations were very much subverted because this is not what I would expect from the third season of 13 Reasons Why. Is it worse than the first season of 13 Reasons Why? Yeah. Is it worse than the second season? Well, that's actually a really tough question, believe it or not. I will say, however, that this show is much more detached from reality than either of the first 2 seasons, and that says a lot.
No. You don't talk. You don't get to say anything. This is your fucking...
Now, without further ado, sit back, relax, and let me tear this piece of shit to shreds. Believe it or not, this season actually has more good to talk about than any of the other seasons I've discussed before. Other than the shit surrounding the almost school shooting that happened in season 2, Tyler is actually a really interesting character. Watching Tyler finding ways and the courage to actually open up to people about his sexual assault that happened in the previous season is actually really entertaining. It's clear in this season that the actor actually cares about this character, and he's actually giving it his all. Nothing feels forced or rushed, or even exaggerated other than the whole school shooting thing, of course. And although I won't say I particularly enjoyed the I am a survivor scene, however, I will say I do like the ending to Tyler's arc. Alright, now it's time for me to talk my shit. The plot is centered around the murder of Bryce Walker, the villain of the previous 2 seasons. Considering Bryce has done a lot of terrible things to most of these characters, each character in the show is actually a suspect, even though the police treat Clay like he's the only logical suspect in this investigation. While all in the meanwhile, Ani, the most annoying person in the history of anything ever, is narrating the entire story. The initial reason why the characters are getting involved, or at least interested in this case, is because they are worried that the police are going to find the gun that Clay and Tony had hit in the river. Other subplots include the previously mentioned Tyler dealing with his sexual assault, Jessica starting a feminist league, the character Tony dealing with the fact that his family got deported by ICE, and the new character Chloe dealing with her abortion. What the fuck is this shit? One of my complaints about the previous season was the fact that it tried juggling so many issues and it kind of ended up falling flat on its face. While now, this show does the same exact thing, only with more issues and with less organization. And much like the second season, all these individual topics are all rushed, so it just comes off as very offensive when they're trying to be interpreted. A good example would probably be Chloe dealing with her abortion. Abortion is another issue I would imagine is very complex and probably would have to do more than, like, say 10 minutes to be spent on this issue. However, the show insists that this subplot just be sprinkled throughout one episode, which just simply is not enough time to flesh out all the complexities of having abortion. This show, once again, also goes out of its way to make it seem like all the adults are against Chloe, which is just not the case in real life. It almost feels like as if the show just wants to stroke off the ego of all teenagers and make it seem like that we all can do it on our own, which is just not the case in some situations. We also aren't shown any of the aftermath of Chloe having an abortion, or what the effects on her psychologically are. Another great example would have to be Tony's family situation, with his family getting sent back to Mexico by ICE. There's no foreshadowing or build up to this conflict that Tony has. It's literally just shoved into our faces. He kind of just shows up and goes, "Oh fuck man, my family's getting deported." I wonder why they added this subplot in the show. Totally not because it's relevant in the news now, because that would be pandering. The best part is that I've only been talking about subplots, not the main story. As I mentioned before, the plot surrounds the police investigation of the murder of Bryce Walker. The whole premise of this is the fact that Bryce has wronged a lot of people in the show. He was actually the previous villain of the first 2 seasons, so everyone actually has a motive to kill him. My main issue is actually with the police investigation side of this, because everyone is kind of an idiot. The entire investigation surrounds it as if Clay was the one who did it. However, it doesn't make any sense the more and more you think about it. The major evidence against Clay is the fact that he had his handprints on the car door of Bryce's car, and the fact that he actually threatened Bryce on numerous occasions. However, there is just way too much evidence against Clay that the police clearly just ignored for some stupid reason. Bryce was heavily beaten before he died, so you would have to have someone who's physically capable of actually beating the living shit out of Bryce. We've seen Clay get his ass beat by Bryce before, so we know it couldn't have been him. We as the audience also know that the ground is very dirty, judging by the sound effects used as they were walking. So there should at least be some footprints. There also should be tire tracks from both Zach's car as well as Alex's car. Both Alex and Zach also both have limps during their encounters with Bryce, so they would have noticed that in their tracks as well. The police even mentioned that they noticed information, so why they pin this entire thing on Clay as if he's the only possible suspect bothers me so much. Also, for some fucking reason, the hospital that Zach is attending when he got his knee dislocated at a football game just kind of just lets him out, which is stupid even for this show. In the end, the characters just kind of blame the murder on Monty since he was already going to prison for the rape of Tyler, avoiding all consequences for all of their actions. The best part of all of this is the fact that Monty's actually killed off screen in prison, so none of the characters get to face any consequences whatsoever. This is even more offensive because the general theme of the entire show has been owning up to your mistakes and trying to move past them. Bryce Walker even goes through a little redemption arc for himself and is actually punished in the end. Whether you agree or disagree with Bryce being able to get a redemption arc is irrelevant to the point. This show has at least tried to build one central theme for the viewers, and this season completely obliterates it. At the end of the day, there's absolutely nothing we as viewers gain from this show. Clay makes me sad. Whatever good characteristics Clay had in the original season is now completely gone for whatever the hell Netflix is doing with him now. Clay has absolutely no character development this season, and when he's accused of murder, he does everything in his power to act like someone who actually did it. Not only is Clay a complete asshole to everyone around him, he also even tries to run away from the police. Speaking of Clay being an asshole, he's now completely unlikable and not relatable for any of the audience. Also, Dylan Minnette seems to care a little bit less than he did for the previous two seasons. I'm not sure what it is, however, I feel that there's a bit I desire from this performance. The appropriate direction to take Clay in with this season is to have him overcome his anger towards Bryce. However, the show chooses not to do that and continues to have Clay act more hostile to Bryce. Wait a minute, what's going on right now?
Hey, buddy.
No. No.
You knew.
Fuck you!
Right?
Now it's time to talk about the big boy in the house, Bryce Walker. Now, as I mentioned earlier in the video, Bryce Walker is actually given a redemption arc for all the horrible things he did in the previous two seasons. Now, whether or not you feel he deserves redemption after what he did is kind of aside from the point. However, my problem is how the show actually handles his redemption. Bryce's redemption arc is held back by the fact that his character is very inconsistent with what he does. One moment he's actually being selfless and going out of his way for others and trying his hardest to actually redeem himself for his horrible actions. And then the next moment he's just being an asshole to Clay. The dynamic between Bryce and Clay could have been something really interesting, but now it's just simply a missed opportunity that the show has. Regardless, my point is, how am I supposed to support this character and his redemption if he's continuously doing misdeeds? If that was the initial direction you were taking with this character, then why'd you spend so much on this guy's backstory? Speaking of which, this character suffers a lot from over-explaining. This character worked a lot better as the bad guy who was just a bad guy because he was a bad guy, if you know what I mean. Another issue with this is, yet again with Clay Jensen, the performance is giving a lot to be desired. However, unlike Dylan Minnette, the actor who plays Bryce is actually considerably bad in this show. He was never good to begin with, to be honest. However, in this season, he's just awful. The actor carries the same blank expression throughout the entirety of the show, and it's honestly kind of hilarious, but at the same time, awfully distracting. Now it's time to talk about the absolute worst character in the entirety of the show, Ani. Ani is supposed to be the new Hannah Baker, whereas she's supposed to be like the narrator. We're supposed to see the story through her perspective. My biggest problem with Ani is the overall structure that she introduces to the show and how we're supposed to follow the chain of events. The story is told essentially just by Ani telling a chain of events that led up to Bryce Walker's death to the police department. However, there's information that's told to the police officer that just simply isn't important to the investigation, and I couldn't help but imagine the police officer rolling his eyes as Ani was explaining all the situation to him. Also, since there's substantially less characters than there were in the previous 2 seasons, the structure is kind of messy and all over the place. Also, in general, the character just kind of sucks. She comes off as being too perfect and is able to relate to every character in the show, which just makes no sense. And to top it off, she's just really annoying, and whenever I see her on screen, I just kind of sigh. I feel like criticizing a character for being annoying comes off as petty, but it's just the truth in this case. I just can't stand her. The writing in this show is fucking awful.
Hey, buddy.
I've already talked about some of the structural issues involving the way the narrative is told with Ani's character. However, it goes a lot worse than this. A prime example of what I'm talking about is the I am a survivor scene. The entire scene for this is meant to be for Tyler's character arc and for him to overcome his anxiety about his sexual assault. When he actually stands up and admits to himself that he is a survivor, it's actually a really powerful scene. But then this happens.
My name is Justin Foley, and I'm a survivor.
I'm sorry, but, what? Justin's whole character arc was about dealing with his drug abuse, not about him dealing with a sexual assault when he was a little kid. This show clearly has no direction, has no idea what it's doing. It's asking us to care about something so late in the series after building up another character's opinions to this. It's honestly pretty insulting. Having the show actually cheapens Tyler's character arc, and that's what's honestly most offensive to me. Then of course, we get to the dialogue, the exchange between the characters. And, well...
Man, your boy Clay's in some shit. Hey, Clay in shit. He should change his name to shit.
Well, that concludes my 3-part series on this terrible television show. I think it's interesting that the show has improved in some areas, but also has gotten worse in others. There's definitely going to be another season, and I may or may not talk about it depending if I have something different to say. Now, if the show has helped you in any way, I'm not trying to take that away from you. I'm just trying to point out the flaws within the show as a television show. However, whether you were hurt from the show personally or you just want to watch a good TV show, I highly recommend avoiding the show as much as possible. This is, honest to God, one of the worst television experiences I've ever had. Thank you for everyone who has watched this far into the video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share out my channel, please. And, as always, until next time.